Welcome back, everybody, and welcome to the Romantic Period of Music Survey. Very popular classical period. We say classical music in general, even though there is technically a classical period, as we just covered last week, but it's still okay to say classical in general. But anyway, but the Romantic period is really one of the more popular sort of periods of time for classical music and music in general in today's music. If you go to concerts, and some of the things that you had seen for your concert review papers I posted was Romantic period music. And sort of talked about in the last lecture that Beethoven was sort of the bridge into this period. And Romanticism, which is going to be around the 1800s, 1820 to 1900 approximately, is really a period that's considered that stressed emotion, individuality, imagination, freedom of expression. So they had used previous forms that the classical period, you'd see sonatas, as you saw, violin concertos and things like that. But they expanded a lot on it. You might have a lot larger pieces, longer pieces, bigger orchestras, greater range of tone colors, dynamics, different uses of pitch, very colorful, a lot more dissonance, instability, things like that. But also, again, I think the biggest thing you'll sort of take away from listening to these romantics was, again, it's the sort of music that really did stress emotion in their style, and it made it sort of more of a personal statement. And this is, it may not seem so much, but it really is sort of the beginning, a huge sort of foundation of the music that we listen to now 200 years later almost, where people listen to soul music or R&B or just music that has, you could sense a singer being sort of very meaningful, even blues or rock music. That the music is very sort of romantically charged, it's emotionally charged. So that sort of really has its roots in this period here in around the 1800s. That's kind of like the most you want to sort of come away with this period. Some of the other things they did was they used a lot of folk themes, a lot of nationality with their music. So like, an artist it might be like a folk song from a particular country that they were from, and they sort of try to weave it through these orchestral pieces. Program music, which is instrumental music, but it sort of tells a story from the in an instrumental point of view without lyrics. We call that program music. Was a popular way of writing music. Again, that's sort of the general thing to kind of walk away with, and you listen to a lot of these composers, and you'll sort of get the idea what they're all about. So you have your listening outline. It's in the website you in a previous video not previous video, in your emailing or Blackboard or whatever we're using, of what things to listen to for this period. We covered some Chopin, we covered Liszt, Tchaikovsky, we did Mendelssohn, Brahms. So these are all sort of the heavy hitters of it. The last thing that's really interesting is I wanted to talk about before we end was we do a little bit of opera in this class or in this period, and the last listening that you'll hear will be an excerpt from Puccini's La Bohème, which again, I'm certainly not an opera expert in it by any means, but it's really one of the most popular operas, and it's really interesting. And the tenor or the lead male vocalist is Luciano Pavarotti, who is considered among the greatest of all vocalists. He's a completely gifted singer. And what you want to, when you're listening to La Bohème, what I gave you on YouTube was an excerpt of the sort of courting of the two main leads, and you'll hear it's really sort of the soliloquy or an aria built for Pavarotti to sing, and sort of his love for this woman. And it's really touching, and there's subtitles for it, so you can sort of catch through it. But sort of the background of La Bohème is sort of, if anyone's seen Rent on Broadway, it's sort of these group of like starving artists. La Bohème translates to the bohemian life. So these like starving artists are sharing this. They call it a garret, or I guess an apartment building, and they're all sort of trying to make it. And the Pavarotti is like a poet. And he's and the woman Mimi is this she's this a very sick. She has tuberculosis, and she's like sort of sick. But it's sort of what's romantic about it is like, you know, sort of Pavarotti is like overlooks this illness and falls in love with her regardless. Of course, she dies at the end, as all these things do. But you'll sort of see there's one sort of point right before the end of his. You don't have to. You can just listen after he's done. You can probably pause it. He'll hit this, what we call hits the high C, and you'll hear people clapping because it's like the highest note in his range to possibly hit for that vocalist. And it was just like, you know, he's just got such a very rich tone to his voice. So that's sort of a good way. I found it to be sort of a good way to sort of capture the sort of the end, put together the whole Romantic period. So listen through the stuff that it was posted. A lot of interesting things, a lot of videos on some pretty interesting, cool stuff. So enjoy, and we'll talk later.